Welcome everyone, Questini here with the discussion about the best beginner campaigns in Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires. With the release of Thrones of Decay and the overwhelming positive reaction to it, there's plenty of people that have either gotten back into Total War Warhammer or are just starting fresh. So this video is meant for those people if you're looking to play certain campaigns and to get used to the experience in Total War Warhammer 3. Starting at number 5, and keep in mind that there are other campaigns that are not going to be on this list, but I could make a list of 10 campaigns or even more than that if I really wanted to, but just for the sake of brevity, I'm going to include only 5 campaigns. But starting at number 5 is Be'lakor of the Warriors of Chaos. If you own Warhammer 3, you can play this campaign. You don't need the Warriors of Chaos DLC, you don't need the Champions of Chaos DLC, and that is something that factors in. How much DLC do you require to have a good campaign experience? Now, DLC, of course, is always going to be useful, including in Be'lakor's campaign situation, but for him, you can handle just fine without any DLC whatsoever, because you are going to have the entire undivided Chaos roster, so all the units over here are going to be available, and you are going to have some of the units that are available for the various gods. So you have a lot of versatility in your army. Furthermore, on top of that, with respect to Be'lakor, he starts with one of the gifts of chaos for each of the gods unlocked. So he gets one undivided gift of chaos unlocked, which obviously gives significant benefits like, having Shatterstone to be able to break down walls is a significant benefit, and so is missile resistance. But you also get one gift for each of the gods. So Tzeentch, Khorne, Slaanesh, and Nurgle. I'd recommend going with Nurgle or Khorne early on, though Nurgle is pretty good because you get that growth per region after winning a battle in all provinces, which is going to be very useful. So lots of flexibility in terms of the roster, lots of choices, and Be'lakor is focused on the demonic units. Usually, with respect to Warriors of Chaos, you have a limit on how many demonic units, or as they're called, gifted units, how many of these you can have in an army. Be'lakor does not have that limit for any of his armies. It's not just for his army, it's for all armies, if I am not mistaken over here. Let me just check. So you can have as many gifted units as you want, and funnily enough, you start with all 4 variants of starting demonic units, so you get Bloodletters, you get Demonettes, you get Plague Bearers, Pink Horrors, and a Hell Cannon. Yes, that is a significant level of power that you start with in this particular campaign. On top of that, you will start with the faction over here of Norskins that you may wish to actually declare war on from the very beginning and take their settlement, or maybe not, really. But you start a war with a minor faction of Tzeentch, well, not take their settlement, vassalize them, subjugate them, and then take over the settlement. You start a war with a minor faction of Tzeentch that, sadly enough, is not led by a Lord of Change anymore, because that was a significant level of power, but you have a fairly easy first few turns over here, and you can subjugate this faction as well, gain some souls, and gain a good level of power. So suddenly you have 2 vassals from the very beginning of your campaign. Now, the significant benefit with these vassals in a campaign is that your starting province is very defensible. Because these 2 vassals, while they won't be so great at taking territory on other portions of the map, they are going to be pretty good at being able to defend Albion. Oh, Perfidious Albion certainly applies over here in this particular campaign. You're just basically Great Britain, being poking your nose in other people's business. So you have a strong defensive capability, and it actually is much greater than you might think, because actually attacking this island is difficult. Because you can't just land troops on a port. There is a port. But if you're attacking this particular island, generally you're gonna an AI faction yourself as a player. If you're fighting against Be'lakor, and I'm sure many people have experienced this, will have to land troops on the shore, take attrition for the vast majority of factions because chaos corruption is a thing, and then attack the settlement of the Isle of Wights, or go over here in the north. What this means for you as a player when you're playing as Be'lakor is you have a very formidable defensive position against any faction that might attack you. It's very difficult to lose this campaign. The reason I'm not rating this particular campaign higher is actually because of that. It's like Warriors of Chaos are very easy to play, they don't have the same risks, but if you're a new player, it is a good campaign to experiment with unit variety. It is a good campaign to experiment with various areas of the campaign map, to experiment with diplomacy, to have a bunch of choices that you wouldn't have in the vast majority of other campaigns in the game. You can go west into Ulthuan, or rather Nagrand. You can go southwest into Ulthuan. You can go south in Bretonnia, east to the Empire, or northeast into Norsca and the Chaos Wastes. You have a lot of flexibility. Norsca does give you the biggest benefits in the sense that you would be able to get a lot of Dark Fortresses there, so do the Chaos Wastes. But regardless of which path you choose to go down, every single one of them will work. You have a significant level of power, and you can subjugate many factions. Now, if you own Warriors of Chaos as the DLC and Champions of Chaos, you can also forcefully confederate the other Warriors of Chaos factions. So for the Warriors of Chaos race pack, you can forcefully confederate Sigvald. If you own Champions of Chaos, you can do it with Valkia. And all others, right? Festus, Archeon, etc. Bellicor is only one of 2 Legendary Lords of the Warriors of Chaos that can do so, the other one being Archeon. So that alone gives you a lot of flexibility if you do own the DLC, but if you don't own the DLC, you won't have that kind of capability. But all the same, it is a significant level of power that you do have access to in this campaign. Lots of climate variety because you have every single climate in the game being suitable. Limitations, of course, with Dark Fortresses in your economy, to be sure. Limitations because you don't have a way of gaining a lot of Gifts of Chaos or souls to power up the Gifts of Chaos, but still, a great deal of variety in this campaign, lots of choices, good army roster, fairly safe position. So if you're a new player starting out and you don't know anything about Total War, this can be a great campaign. But I would say the downside, and the reason I'm ranking it at the lowest point of this particular list, is it's too safe. It's kind of like the Huns in Age of Empires 2, because the reason I make that point, with the Huns you don't need to build houses in Age of Empires 2. And that means it's very easy. It's like a lot easier for a new player to get used to that, but at the same time, you're not going to be able to learn some of the things that you need to deal with with every other race. And that applies to Bellicor. But still, a good experience, just getting used to the campaign mechanics. So if you're a completely new player, I'd firmly recommend playing the tutorial campaign. It is a good experience. Alright, moving on. And number 4, it is the all-time reigning champion, Tyrion. I mean, Tyrion has always been on these lists, and it's the only campaign that Creative Assembly actually recommends that actually fits the bill. Tyrion is a great campaign for beginners because, like with Bellicor, you have a very safe position, though not quite as safe as Bellicor does. You do start with Lothern in southern Ulthuan. Basically, no one's going to attack you over here with the exception of, potentially Noctilus, and suffice to say, you're going to obliterate Noctilus if he does decide to show his face. And usually, he won't attack you unless you decide to attack him, or you end up losing a lot of troops in battles. Like, you have a really good starting province, you do have a huge amount of power through Tyrion, over here, because he's one of the best Legendary Lords in combat. You get good faction effects with diplomatic relations with High Elves, so you can make confederations work with the minor factions of Ulthuan, though you will need to own the DLC to be able to confederate Alfarian or Alariel, so different DLC for that. But even if you don't own the DLC, this particular campaign has a good amount of potential. The reason I'm not rating it as highly as some other campaigns is, it is still very safe, and I think, you need even a new player to have some level of risk in their campaigns. Another thing about the High Elves, though, in particular, is that their basic army roster of archers and spearmen, or archers with light armor, that's what I'd recommend you use. Archers with light armor and spearmen is a very effective one. And to be honest, High Elves do have severe limitations in terms of hero capacity and unit recruitment, and also their research tree. I do think they need a rework to be better from that perspective. But it's a too safe campaign to a certain extent. You will absolutely obliterate anyone that stands in your path. You will be able to gain a very high level of power, and very few things will be able to stand in your way. Really good campaign if you want to learn how to play with a range roster, really good starting position, and you do have certain opponents over here. And it's kind of a straightforward campaign as well. Go beat up Morathi, go beat up Malekith. So if you're looking for a campaign where you can learn certain things about, like, you know, or having a straight campaign path, this is a good one. The Wolf one does also present a bunch of choices because you do have a lot of variety in terms of where you might go. Though keep in mind, climate limitations are certainly a real thing. But yeah, it is a good campaign for beginners, no real problems with it, no major downsides. It benefits, of course, from owning the DLC, but you don't need it to have a good time in this campaign. You do need it if you want to unify all of Wolf 1, but you can live in a Tyrion campaign even without that. It's a great campaign with a straightforward path over here towards Nagorond, but you do also have other choices and flexibility in the campaign to deal with. Also, a great campaign to learn diplomacy because High Elves do depend on diplomacy in order to fuel their economy. Without trade agreements, High Elves are just not going to be able to compete with other factions in terms of their economy, as their economy is heavily dependent on those kind of trade agreements. So good campaign. I just kind of think like the lack of risk in this particular campaign has certainly lowered its position on this list compared to previous lists that I've done over here. I think like you do need some risk if you're a completely new player. You do need to have some level of challenge, even if you are playing on easy, and actually especially if you're playing on easy in this particular game. So certainly not the best campaign from that perspective, though there is still, like, if you let Dark Elves build up to a significant level of force, so don't underestimate Morathi or Malekith. Malekith, who may control the entire corner of the campaign map over here, or a very substantial portion of it, and you have to deal with him. That can be a bit harsh, though that depends on faction potential, so randomization when you begin a campaign, which factions are going to be strong and which are not in that particular campaign. So maybe Malekith ends up getting wiped out by the angry dwarf. Still, High Elves do have a great basic roster. It's just a bit too good in the sense you don't need to use any other units in the entire campaign. Like, you can make do with just like basic archers or archers with light armor and spearmen throughout the entire campaign. So that works. Maybe get a couple of Eagle Claw bolt throwers, so that can work. It's just like, the game is not going to force you to recruit anything else, so I think that's perhaps not teaching players the very best lessons in a campaign. Also, I do have a bit of an issue with the way the High Elves are in terms of, like, variety in terms of their unit recruitment, hero capacity, all that kind of stuff. Although you could possibly play a campaign as Emmerich and get Tamarkon's defeat trait and get a lot of that hero capacity, but you still need tier 4 elements to unlock those heroes in the first place, except nobles. Anyway, moving on. And number 3 is Grombrindal, the White Dwarf. Yes, the dwarves have actually become a good race for beginners now because they have a lot of flexibility in their campaigns in terms of their unit roster. A lot of things do work that they didn't work previously. Now, this is the kind of campaign with the dwarves where you would benefit from owning DLC, so either Thrones of Decay for the Demon Slayer Lord in particular, and all the other units, Thunder Barges in particular, great DLC in a lot of ways. So yeah, Thrones of Decay is actually worth purchasing. And also the first DLC that was released, minus the Warriors of Chaos pre-order benefit, but the first DLC that was released for Warhammer 1, which is the King and the Warlord DLC for Belegar. It's mostly for the Rune Lord, though you will be fine if you own no DLC whatsoever for the Dwarves. I'm quite serious on this particular subject. It's beneficial, but the basic Dwarf roster, hero roster, unit roster is very strong. I'd say Thrones of Decay is worth it more because you do get a hero that gives you replenishment, but you will handle just fine. Grombrindal is an absurd legendary lord. How absurd of a legendary lord is? Well, he can get, personally, through the ancestors, the living ancestor benefit, various benefits like an army benefit, a personal combat benefit, so he's either stronger or his entire army is stronger, or faction benefits in either, construction or replenishment. So lots of benefits over here to choose from. But that's not all that we're talking about with respect to Grombrindal. Oh no, this guy is crazy on a very, very different level. You just need to own Warhammer 1 in this campaign, and That's, by the way, where we're going to get to. See, what makes Grombrindal so freaking crazy is his blue skill line is genuinely the best blue skill line in the entire game, bar none. Because you get a skill line over here that gives you 15% campaign movement range for all characters. So all your armies, all your heroes are moving 15% faster on the campaign map. And then on top of that, you get Mountain Striders for himself only. That gives you an additional 15% campaign movement range. So that is a great situation. You have a lot of flexibility in terms of getting across the campaign map. And because the dwarves now get a lot of unit variety far quicker in the campaign, like you start with the barracks, you can get Fanes at tier 2. So like once the initial barracks he has is built up, you can get Fanes. And now you can get Iron Drakes and Thunderers in a campaign, or Artillery, which was available beforehand. There's some benefits in terms of going for the Grudge Throwers, though. Your first Age of Reckoning is very easy to complete, and that is going to give you a ton. You can get the Grudge Thrower, you can get the Flame Cannon, so you don't necessarily need to rush for Artillery as much as you had to before. You do have all the heroes available at tier 2, so you actually have a good hero army that you can get access to very, very early on in this particular campaign, and you have a wide variety of different playstyles that do work in this campaign. Oh, do you want to just go Quarrelers or even Dwarf Warriors? You want to go Iron Drakes, Thunderers? You want to go Gyrocopters? Because, that is a very viable strategy. You want to mix in Artillery? Do you want to go Slayers, especially if you own Thrones of Decay? All of that is very viable. So great Lord, great skill line, great focus campaign, a campaign that's greatly focused on doing one thing in the early game, beating the crap out of Malekith. Poor Malekith, he's just there to be beat up by everyone that surrounds him. His campaign is genuinely not worth playing, even if you do decide to play Dark Elves, because he's actually the easiest to confederate in the Dark Elf campaign. So why would you play Malekith when you can get him, and his faction effects are just not worth it, really. He certainly is worth it to confederate, but yeah. So great army variety, good economy, good campaign mechanics. The dwarves have benefited so immensely from the release of 5.0. Their rework has made them from one of the worst races in the game to genuinely one of the best, if not the best in a lot of ways. Because you do have risk in a dwarf campaign. You can lose, quote unquote, or you can fail an Age of Reckoning. This is perhaps a more complex campaign in certain ways because you do have to worry about different things in this. But it's such an amazing experience with every Dwarven campaign. I just think, like, outside of Malachi, who is really more for veteran players, like, seriously, don't pick up Thrones of Decay if you're a completely new player and play Malachi. Although, possibly on easy would be a lot simpler. Honestly, like, it's hard for me, as someone who plays exclusively on Legendary, to know how easy or hard things would be. But yeah, Malachi is in a really rough campaign situation, so maybe not the best campaign to start as a beginner player. But all the same, Grombrindal, I think, is a really great campaign. And especially because with the new Grudge system, you now have distant confederations. To play Grombrindal, you need to own Warhammer 1, right? But if you own Warhammer 1, you can play all of these campaigns. Well, Belegar, like Fork is going to require Warhammer 2. Belegar is going to require a DLC for Warhammer 1. But you can get confederations, distant confederations, with Ungrim and Thorgrim, if you're playing as Grombrindal. So that means in this campaign you have a wide variety of things that you can do. So you could just spend your entire campaign playing in Acheron, but then you can do Distant Confederation and get like Thorgrim or Ungrim in this particular campaign, even if you own absolutely none of the DLC. If you own Warhammer 2, you can get Thoric as well in this campaign. And if you own the King of the Warlord DLC, you get Belegar. And of course, if you own Thrones of Decay, you get Malachi. So lots of flexibility in this campaign. That's the one thing I really like about Dwarven campaigns. It's just like that huge variety in every single one of their campaigns. Because like the question is, who do you confederate first? And if you confederate a faction, what's the situation you're going to have? Because it's generally going to be quite different than the one you might have in a previous campaign. Like even just playing the same campaign again and again. Like let's say I'm playing Grombrindal 5 times, I might have 5 very different campaigns with respect to the confederation situation there. So it ends up being unexpected. It ends up creating a lot of variety. It does force you to do things and to learn how to deal with things that very few other campaigns do force you to do. Though I possibly wait until they rework Age of Reckoning with possibly the release of 5.1. Mind you, I think a lot of the complaints with regards to Age of Reckoning are blown out of proportion. Just my personal perspective. played like almost 300 hours in Thrones Decay 5.0 so far, and I can tell you, yeah, it is a hassle sometimes, but you can make it work very well. And maybe the experience of learning how to make it work will make you a better player. Because it's not just like, oh, conquer, conquer, conquer. No, you got to be a bit intelligent about that, going for certain targets over others. Making that choice, is it important to fill up your Age of Reckoning meter, or is it important to go for territory that might be worth it? Is it important to go for enemies that are going to be a genuine threat? Or is it important to go for enemies that are going to give you more grudges? That kind of stuff. All the same, great campaign, great experience, great skill line, lots of combat capability. Like, Grombrindal himself is like an insane monster in terms of his melee capability. Like, they have buffed him. Like, he gets physical resistance, missile block chance, or weapon strength, or aura endurance. He's actually quite a bit stronger in combat than he was previously. And that is pretty crazy. Like, he was the highest damage dealer of the dwarves as a legendary lord beforehand. I mean, he's slow because he's on foot and dwarves are slow. Like, one argument people have made in multiplayer is that the basic rune lord would be better than every other dwarf legendary lord, but that's for multiplayer. For campaign, like, Grombrindal is insanity. Just pure freaking insanity in a campaign. And hey, lightning strike, pretty useful stuff. Better casualty replenishment because 6% faction wide. Cheaper recruitment, higher recruit rank, global recruitment capacity. Huge amounts of benefit. I would recommend getting King and the Warlord at the very least, and yes, Thrones of Decay. You only need to own 2 DLCs to just complete the dwarves. And also Warhammer 2, like, because Foric, right? Maybe something to do with Total War access to access this campaign, or possibly Foric. Don't recall what the situation is there. But yeah, dwarves are awesome. Don't have cavalry, but that's where the gyrocopters are in. Moving on. At number 2, it would be Grimgor Ironhide. There is a joke out there from someone saying that there's 3 things certain in life: death, taxes, and constant loving Grimgor. Well, what I would say in reply to that, it's less about me loving Grimgor and more so about Creative Assembly loving Grimgor. I mean, seriously, of all the legendary lords that came out with Warhammer 1, the one that's always been relevant, even at the weakest point of the Greenskins, has been Grimgor Ironhide. An absolute monster in battles, a monster on the campaign map. And since Warhammer 3 has come out, he's become even stronger. I mean, he used to start over here in Saber Mountain, and he was pretty crazy. Now he starts in Eagle Eyries with the Tier 2 settlement, being able to get access to units earlier than most other Greenskins. Well, maybe not Skarsnik, but Skarsnik's still Skarsnik. And they buffed him in a major way with the Khazars by putting him over here. They buffed him even further with adding Tamarkan right next to him, because, yeah, you're going to end up fighting Tamarkan, which means you're going to get his defeat rate in a natural sense in this campaign, and that's just going to give you a lot of power. What makes Grimgor such a great campaign? Well, Greenskins in general are a really great race that fits within the intent of playing a campaign in Immortal Empires. As Creative Assembly has stated, Total War is built around the idea of territorial expansion, aggression, playing an aggressive campaign, and there are few in the entire game that do it as well as the Greenskins. And since Grimgor is the best of the legendary lords of the Greenskins, between his starting position, his faction effects, his lord skill line, his quest items, yeah, it's really hard to compete with that, I gotta say. So a tremendous level of power available in this particular campaign from the very get-go. And what's great about this campaign is you're surrounded on all sides by factions that to a degree or another do dislike you, but you're more powerful than them. But that means you have to worry about being attacked on multiple sides, but you absolutely have the ability of dealing with every single one of these threats. In fact, Grimgor is so absurd that in the hands of a veteran player, you can take Zarnagrud within 10 turns or 14 turns of a campaign, or 20 turns at worst of a campaign. Getting a tier 4 city from that early on is a significant level of power. But it's not just the power that is available to Greenskins. Again, they have a lot of flexibility because a lot of their structures are fairly cheap. You can raise settlements to the ground, or sack them rather, reduce them to a level, get a lot of money for that, and then build them up. You have a great amount of hero capacity with shamans at tier 3, Black Orc Big Bosses at tier 3, really powerful heroes. And if you own the Warden and the Punch DLC, you do get access to Giant River Troll Hags. The DLC is a nice benefit, especially the replenishment hero that Giant River Troll Hags are, but even if you don't own any of the Greenskin DLC, it's still a very good campaign to begin playing with as you get into Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires. The only thing you need to own is just Warhammer 1. That is it. And then you get access to Grimgor and his ludicrous levels of power. And so many options, really, in this campaign. Like, oh, do I spend my time in the mountains more? Do I go after Astaroth? Do I go after Zarnagrund? Do I do all of these things at once if I know what I'm doing? Yeah, lots, immense levels of power. And it gets even better when you add in, like... It is an inhabitable climate, but being able to get the tomb over here is absurd in its own right. And yes, don't ignore Tamerkhan and farming his defeat rate for tons and tons of hero capacity. Grimgor is by far and away the best Greenskin Legendary Lord, and he's a joy to play. I mean, Greenskins are the kind of race that excels in terms of playing Warhammer 3, quote-unquote, properly, if you will, in quite a lot of ways. So if you want to play a campaign where you're learning about hyper-aggression or just aggression in general, territorial expansion, dealing with various opponents, but having the power to effectively deal with them, Grimgor is a superb choice for any player, both new and old. Doesn't matter what level of experience you have with this game, Grimgor is a very enjoyable campaign in Warhammer 3 at the moment. Really great. Recommend it more with the DLC, of course, but again, it's not necessarily... The casualty replenishment is the biggest loss if you don't have the Warden and Punch DLC, but that's about it. I mean, you can talk about King the Warlord. Yes, you will miss out on nasty skulkers, but you don't necessarily need them as much as you might think, actually, in a campaign. It's really just that Giant River Troll Hag. And that's not necessarily something you can say about other DLC. I mean, you could argue about Night Goblin War bosses, but regular Orc bosses and Goblin Grey Shamans are actually better to get than Night Goblin leaders, so you're not really missing all that much without the DLC. Well, Regiments are renowned, of course, Confederation options, all that, though. You do have the ability of Confederating Azag in this particular campaign, and the way Confederation works for the Greenskins is just go up there, beat up their main army, and thus you have Confederation. Ludicrous level of power. Though you may want to rush to save Azag from the fury of the dwarves and the fury of Draika. Ooh, or Drycha, as she's pronounced. Alright, so number 2, what could possibly eclipse that? Well, the answer is pretty simple.
On a distant, shadowed land, the free people will make their final stand. Their heroes will gather, their forces will be marshaled, and they will die bravely. But still, they will die. And my people will be slaves to the Dark Ones. All will bow before the power of the Fallen One.
How poetic. But really, Carl, Tretch, has your supreme patriarch slipped and fallen on his head? What could the rats do to him?
He is the Fallen One!
Gelt? Of all the horrors this world has to offer, a disfigured mage is the Fallen One. Just what power could he possibly unleash?
You do not wish to know.
This is good. And of course, it would be Balthazar Gelt in the top spot on this list with his great rework and the rework of the Empire. So many more possibilities in a campaign, and it's interesting to think about the idea that the Empire was kind of always designed as like a beginner race, right? A race that has a good amount of variety of units, good possibilities in their campaign, but I don't think they've ever really been that great of a beginner's campaign. Well, maybe Karl Franz in Warhammer 1 to some extent, but still. Plenty of issues that the Empire has always had. Now, Gelt is great because of his Caffean adventure, or his alchemical romance, so sadly enough they have renamed that for whatever reason. I'm not sure what you were trying to imply with that, Creative Assembly, or what you weren't trying to imply with that. But you do start in a pretty good position over here with the settlement that has 2 landmarks. You can get it to tier 2 fairly quickly because, yeah, you have that event over there from the very beginning of your campaign. You can start recruiting swordsmen and outriders from the beginning of your campaign, so that's pretty good. I would recommend going for the shooting range because being able to get a witch hunter, being able to get handgunners and outriders is a significant benefit. Now, Gelt is absurdly powerful through the colleges of magic. In fact, Legend of Total War talked recently about the Doom stack that he was sent by someone else, and he basically called it the most powerful army in the game. So understand that Gelt is powerful, but that power is not just like, oh, you play Be'lakor, for instance, and you are undefeatable. No. You have heroes, and they have a huge amount of power, but you still need to play the game. You still need to use them in battle. So this is a great campaign in terms of getting used to using magic, in terms of being able to get used to using heroes in a campaign. I used to say that Cafe, specifically Zhao Ming, was a great beginner campaign, but now it's like Gelt has far eclipsed Cafe in a lot of ways. Maybe Cafe needs some more further improvements. Now, what is great about this campaign? Well, there's multiple things that are really good about this. One, you don't need to own any of the Empire DLC to have a great time with it. The Empire DLC will benefit you, specifically Thrones of Decay, rather than Beast and the Hunter or Hunter and the Beast and Grim and the Grave. Because like Grim and the Grave, doesn't really add all that much. Yes, some units here and there, an Archlector choice. But for the most part, the Empire DLC is just going to give you lore choices, but the Generals of the Empire can handle things quite well. Their skill line has certainly been updated, they're good army leaders, they have a good amount of potential. So even if you do not own any DLC for the Empire, though certainly Thrones of Decay would be very worth it to pick up, the gunpowder units in particular that are available through the shooting range, but even if you don't own any DLC for Empire, you still have all of the heroes with the exception of the Engineer. You still have a lot of the unit roster over here, with the exception of, like, you know, things like landships, gunpowder units, huntsmen, archers, all that. But plenty of options like handgunners, halberdiers, crossbowmen, cannons, hellstorms, steam tanks, regular steam tanks, and the volley guns, which are Thrones of Decay. But really, if you're playing an Imperial campaign, Thrones of Decay adds so much. Lots of power, lots of flexibility with the mages that bring various benefits. I'd recommend starting with the Celestial Mage at the beginning of the campaign, just the movement range that these guys can provide through their skill line over here, and also for their ability of replenishing 100% campaign movement range. Many different ways. What I think this really sells this campaign is there's many choices that can be made in the campaign. The most obvious one, and I would argue the most boring one, is, yeah, go for Fu Hung, take the Bamboo Crossing, make a decision to either be friends with Cafe or have a antagonistic relation with Cafe. So, do you want to conquer Cafe in the name of the Empire, or do you want to be friends with Cafe? That is a choice. Or do you want to return to the Empire and just give up all the territory you give in Cafe and teleport to Altdorf with significant benefits? So that is a choice. Or do you want to cheese it, as I have in my campaigns as Gelt? Instead of going east, just take these two settlements, get a peace with these fellows right here after, like, turn 3, and then march over here against these Skaven with whatever units you've picked up along the way, and then go deal with Gorst and Kugath. Lots of choices. You have the best climate options of any Imperial campaign, because you get mountains, you get temperate, you get savanna, you get deserts, and jungle. So that means that you are actually better at controlling Cafe than any other faction, with the exception of the Skaven, with the exception of, like, Snitch over here. You're better at controlling all of Cafe than the vast majority of factions, including any of the Cafe factions in the campaign. You do have territorial limitations with the Darklands, but you can control the entirety of the mountains more. You can control the entirety of a Cafe, with the exception of, like, the magical forest here. But you're going to be in a really good spot. Lots of power, lots of variety. The Empire inherently has a lot of variety with the units. Not so much the lore choices by default, but the unit choices, the hero choices, like, and all Imperial heroes are available at tier 2. Even better, you can increase capacity by 1 for all these heroes with Imperial colleges over here, so you can actually be running around with 2 heroes of one particular type. I'd recommend getting Warrior Priest as quickly as possible in the campaign, just that replenishment helps you out. But yeah, lots of flexibility, and on top of that, I would dare say that Cafe, of all the areas in the game, is the single best area to play a campaign in. Like, the Empire is not that horrible, so you can go back to the Empire, but you can do both, by the way. Like, you can play a campaign in Cafe and play a campaign in the Empire. You just need to get territory outside of Cafe by the time the event comes up, which requires these guys to be wiped out. But cheesing is certainly involved in that. You might have to provoke a war between Zhao Ming and Snitch in order to give yourself the buffer, because otherwise he's going to destroy the Burning Nomads. But still, significant level of power available in this campaign, significant level of flexibility in terms of playing both the campaign and playing the battles. Huge amount of variety because of the magic. So many mages. It's really fun. Like, when magic, you kind of always fall into this trap of like, okay, which is the best magic for this particular race, right? Whereas with Gelt, you want to use every single magic school in a campaign. And you have a wide variety of opponents. You have Cathayan factions, you have Wood Elves, you have, not Norscans because they're going to be wiped out by Decay, but you have Lizardmen, you have Dark Elves, you have Skaven, you have Vampire Counts, you have Chaos, you have Ogres, you have more Vampire Counts, you have Nurgle, Chaos Dwarves. Like, this is the great thing about this starting position. The sheer amount of variety. Like, if you want to learn the game and how to deal with the different races in a campaign, sure, you might make it trivial. You might trivialize it by being able to use the powerful magic. But having to deal with those opponents, learning about them is a great learning experience for every player. The only thing you need to do for this campaign, the only thing you really need to own is Warhammer 1. The DLC, yeah, it's beneficial, it's good, it's all that, but just own Warhammer 1. You still have replenishment, you still have all the magic schools, you still have the witch hunters, you're missing the engineers, you're missing some lore choices and units, but the baseline units of the Empire are really good. And on top of that, the fact that you can literally print money in this campaign through transmutation gives you a lot more financial flexibility, and you can use that money to unlock all the Electrocount state troopers, figure out which ones work, which ones don't, like cavalry, range units, artillery, machines. So yeah, you want steam tanks? Go get them over there, you know. Go get those steam tanks. Go get the Caribou greatswords. Get spearmen that are better than any other spearmen in any other Imperial faction, because, yeah, Eldred's guards are really good. High level of armor. Very high level of armor. They actually have one of the highest level of armor for such unit, and technically it's a tier 1 or tier 2 unit. Limited quantities, of course, with the Electrocount state troopers, but damn, the level of possibilities over here in this campaign are... Like, even if Gelt did not have the insane level of magic that he does have in this campaign, I would say just the events and being starting Cafe and the Imperial improvements, the Empire rework, not Gelt's rework, the Empire rework, would make this campaign worth playing. Add in the magic and all the possibilities that provides in a campaign, and you get an extraordinarily good campaign in the game. Certainly one of the best in the campaign. Great for new players, great for veteran players. It doesn't matter what skill level you have. It doesn't matter which path you have, you are going to have a good time playing this particular campaign. It's pretty great. If you're a more veteran player, like obviously Malachi is a great campaign, of course, really, really fun campaign, but there's something really special about Gelt's insanity with wizards, not gonna lie about that. So that's all I had to say. Let me know what you guys think about all of this, which other campaigns you'd recommend. I'd certainly put Xiao Ming, you know, if I was making this list longer, I'd probably put someone like Xiao Ming on this particular list. You could consider some other Dwarven campaigns. Maybe Vlad, if you're talking about Vampire Count, certainly a good campaign, though bit tricky for beginner players, especially with the mega power the dwarves do have right now, but still plenty of possibilities there. But, you know, just various options available there. Maybe Lokir or Marathi or even Malekith would be some good choices. But let me know what you guys think. And if you do appreciate my content, I would very much like to ask for your help at the moment. Things are going pretty rough right now for me at the moment. Not a great situation. Because let me just say this. Having the disaster of Shadows of Change and having a lot of game delays has really screwed over myself and many other content creators. It hasn't been a good time as of late, so we're all paying the price. It's looking up going forward, but yeah, just that kind of situation. So if you'd like to donate in anything, like, it would be greatly appreciated. PayPal, Patreon links are in the description. Stay tuned for more.